Hey guys, I'm Leo Camacho, and this is my review of Star Wars The Last Jedi for Attractions Magazine. Now don't worry, this is a spoiler-free review, but let me tell you, that is very hard to do because, holy cow, this movie is packed with things that could potentially be spoilers, but don't worry, I'll be avoiding that. I'll be talking more in generalizations. I'll be talking more about the way I feel about the film and just sort of the way it impacted me. So on that, my very first note is, I walked out of that theater and I didn't quite know how to feel, but I do know that I enjoyed the film very much. It is a very, very fun movie, but I left with so many more questions than I went in with. So I guess that's sort of a direction in answering the question, do we find out what happens? And the answer is yes and no, it's both. This is the middle of the story. As we know, this is a new trilogy, and in that, this movie parallels The Empire Strikes Back in a lot of ways, but in a very different way than The Force Awakens paralleled A New Hope, where that was more symmetrical. The Force Awakens and A New Hope they line up they almost overlap. They have very similar story plots and very similar iconography and things like that. This more or less follows the tone of The Empire Strikes Back, where sort of, you know, we have the players in the game, and now we find out what happens, and as you know, is in Act 2, this is where the problems really arise so that in Act 3 they can be resolved. And this movie does it very well. But yes, I would say that it parallels The Empire Strikes Back a lot in that sense. But where it deviates is that it sort of has similar situations, but the outcomes are completely different. It doesn't have the same sort of mirroring that The Force Awakens had with A New Hope. It definitely has its own identity, which I really enjoyed. And one thing that this movie does exceptionally well is it expands the universe. It makes it feel so much bigger, which is a huge undertaking when you consider the fact that Star Wars is already so immense with Legends and with the EU and everything like that. This still manages to make Star Wars feel even bigger than we thought before. And for that, I applaud the film. Everything that you want to see, by the way, is in this film. It is a very, very, very fun trip. But it is a very overwhelming trip, and if I have to pick a negative, that's where I'll insert it here. It's sensory overload. There are so many things happening in this film, and from my personal point of view, I would have liked it if they would have toned that down a little bit. But on the same token, we get a lot more character development for everybody. So that's the plus that comes out of that. Old characters change, new characters change, brand new characters that we didn't even know about are now major players or play a major part. And that's just a lot to keep track of. I like it though. It keeps that soap opera-y feel of Star Wars and sort of starts guiding you in the direction that you know that this is going to continue. The Star War never really ends. And every new trilogy sort of seems to carry on that legacy of proving that when one empire falls, another one starts, right? We lost the Empire and we got the First Order. You know, we had the Trade Federation, it became the Galactic Republic, and so on and so forth. And this movie is continuing that legacy. It is a movie that is setting up legacies for sure. And also, it throws back to older ones as well. I think they did a lot of fan service in this film, which I enjoyed, but they're not afraid to re-identify themselves and give you something new, which makes the movie very, very enjoyable in that regard. Like I said, the only real con I have with this movie is that it's just a lot to take in and raises a lot of questions that I didn't even know I had in the first place. But you know, to the movie's credit, it makes that process really, really enjoyable. And there are a lot of moments where the crowd just really just rallied into the film, and that was cool. And I want to say that this isn't a typical fan screening. It's not an opening day screening. This was a press screening. So there was a lot more reservation in the audience. And even with that said, it was impossible for people to contain themselves. So that's a huge plus. Something that I found really confusing about this movie was its placement of comedy. As we know, The Force Awakens had one-liners in it. And not to say that Star Wars was devoid of lightheartedness. Obviously, Return of the Jedi, it's all about the Ewoks and so on and so forth. But for a good example in The Force Awakens is when Kylo's interrogating Poe and he has the line, "Who talks first? I talk first? You talk first?" Those kinds of one-liners are far more present in The Last Jedi, far more. It's not just like one or two more jokes. There are a lot of humorous moments. But it's strange because it's a juxtaposition to the overall darkness. I would say that the overarching theme of this movie, by far, is conflict. Not just the war that's happening, but conflict between independent characters, not just good guys and bad guys, by the way, conflict across the board, conflict with personal emotions, conflict with factions, conflicts with individuals, and most importantly, conflict with the audience. The audience never really feels like you have a grip on what's going on and you're just sort of buckled up and fighting the good fight as best you can. And that's sort of cool because it feels like the movie sucks you in that regard. You become part of the Star Wars, so to speak. But that can be a little bit overwhelming, like I was saying, because there's so much to it. But I think overall it is enjoyable. I think that it's a lot of fun. I think it might be one of the best Star Wars movies. And I can say that in full confidence. It's still not my favorite, but it would probably be top 3. If I put Empire at #1 for me, just to give you guys a frame of reference, Empire is #1. A New Hope and The Force Awakens and Rogue One, I kind of can't really decide which one I like those. You know, you can crucify me later. But definitely The Last Jedi probably comes in that bracket, that hierarchy at least, if that means anything to you. But yeah, it's a good movie. It's a lot of fun. I highly recommend you go watch it. I highly recommend you go watch it twice. I'm gonna go watch it later on this week as well during the actual opening night, and then I get to feel that energy of the movie theater. But I want to see it just because I need to reprocess that data. There is a lot going on in this film. It is a tough thing to take in just one viewing. Yeah, but it's fun. There are lots of scenes. There's so many scenes that make you just rally and it screams Star Wars. And then there's other scenes that you've never seen in a Star Wars film before, and it makes it feel so unique and special. I think they really took to heart the fact that audiences were conflicted about The Force Awakens paralleling A New Hope so much that they wanted to create that tone of The Empire Strikes Back, because, you know, they're kind of following that pattern, right? We've kind of got that infrastructure now. But they are very careful about distinguishing it and making it its own film. And making the characters their own characters. Like, you don't, like, a really good example is, oh, Rey's the new Luke Skywalker. No, she's not. She is definitely her own character, her own version of the Force, her own philosophy, her own pursuit. They are very careful about making sure that they're not falling into archetypes, while at the same time filling those slots. Poe is a pilot, but he's so much more. He has such a bigger role in this. And that's another thing. All of the character development is just, it is hard to define, because where you think somebody's going to zig, they zag. And then sometimes people say, you know, straight and true. I think that was part of the reason I enjoyed this movie, is because I couldn't tell what was going to happen, but at the same time, I still don't know what's happening, and you know, that's sort of where both of my counter arguments lie, in that sort of space in between there. But anyways, overall review, definitely a thumbs up. If I have to give it, you know, stars, I'd give it 4.5 stars. I wouldn't give it a perfect 5. But it's definitely a 4 to 4.5 stars. It is an awesome film, a lot of fun. As I'm a huge Star Wars fan, as you can see, always rocking the Star Wars gear. Lifelong fan. This isn't coming from a purely critical standpoint. Like, this is emotional and meaningful to me, and I still really enjoyed it. So with that said, go check it out for yourselves and let us know what you guys think. We Attractions Magazine and me personally would love to. I just want to know what people are feeling about this film. What's it stirring? What's it creating in the fandom out there? So thank you guys for watching this review, and we'll see you next time. Later.